The transfer window is shut, and we're going to wrap up deadline day on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. We are live coming up to 10 p.m. on Monday, the 1st of September. There's been plenty of outgoings today to report on involving the Arsenal, and the one incoming that we were expecting in truth, but that has now been officially confirmed. We've got lots to get into, lots to unpack. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, how are we doing? Happy Monday night. Coming to you all live at coming up to what? 10 p.m. UK time. I've got to say, I am absolutely shattered. Absolutely shattered to the point where I was considering saying, not doing it. We'll be back tomorrow and we'll chat about all this stuff in the morning. But I figured, seeing as I promised that we were going to bring you an episode late into the evening, seeing as I promised that there would be some content out with regards to transfer deadline day, I figured I needed to live up to my promise. So here I am. And I knew once I pressed the go live button and we got into the swing of things, I'd be absolutely fine. And I am. So we've got quite a bit to get through. And I'm really actually looking forward to talking about some of these stories because I think some of them are quite interesting. I really do. We're going to focus on Arsenal, of course, because this is an Arsenal podcast, and we will spend the majority of the time covering off those that have departed, the player that's come in, Piero Hincapie. Obviously, we've had that announcement, a couple of hours ago now. But I do want to talk about some of the other big stories as well, because it's been such an interesting deadline day in comparison to some of the others that turn out to be damp squibs and don't really live up to the hype that transfer deadline day carries around with it. For example, we're going to touch on the Oleksandr Isak stuff. You know, only last night, so only on Sunday night, did you feel there was a breakthrough between Newcastle and Liverpool? Lots of people suspected that this was a move that was going to materialize right at the back end of the window, and that's what's happened, of course. But interesting the way it kind of developed really late. Mark Gay was on the brink of joining Liverpool. He'd even had his medical, only for Crystal Palace to pull the plug on that. We're going to talk Vieira, we're going to talk Lokonga, we're going to talk Nelson, we're going to get into all of that. But Oleksandr Zinchenko, I got to say, I didn't see that one coming. I thought he would be staying put, but he is on his way to Nottingham Forest at the time of recording. So lots to unpack, lots to get into. If you guys haven't done so already, leave us a like on the video. It really does help, and make sure that you are subscribed to the channel as well, because that really does help. And if you're listening to us on Apple, or if you're listening to us on Spotify, then please do leave us a review. I can see some of you are saying that the camera's a little bit blurry. Let me just try and change something. Hold on, stay with me. Don't go anywhere for a second. 1 second. Let's have a look if it's to do with this. Is it to do with my connection? Because I haven't changed anything on the camera. Let's have a look. Is this any better now? Let me know. Let me know if the visuals are coming through a little bit better now. I don't know what the problem would have been, other than maybe a bit of a dodgy connection somewhere. Anyway, let's get into the subjects. Let's get into the topics. Those of you that are listening on audio, you won't even care, will you? Harry's on 720p apparently. Am I still on that? Nope, looks the same. Okay, 1 second. Give me a second. Dial-up connection, Harry, someone says in the chat. Video still blurry, audio not in sync. This is terrible. This is making me think that my gut was right to say, let's do this stream in the morning. How about now? Let me know. Let me. I have no idea why this would be the case. It's fine now, way better. Okay. All I did was literally refresh the page, because I'm on StreamYard, which is a browser-based thing. So all I literally did was refresh the page. But anyway, look, lots and lots to get into then. Shall we begin then, rather than wasting any more time with dodgy connections and all the rest of it? Let's work our way through my list, because I made a list earlier, because there's so many things I want to talk about. Okay, let's start with the Arsenal then, and we'll start with Albert Sambi Lokonga, who has moved to Hamburg for an undisclosed fee. It was said by Jordan Davis of The Sun that Arsenal have managed to get a fee of around about £10 million for Sambi Lokonga. Now, if that is right, that's really, really good going as far as I'm concerned, because I thought we were going to have to, accept something like 2-3 million quid for Sambi Lokonga. I'd actually spoken to somebody earlier in the day who claims to be in the know. And I say claims because he told me that Arsenal were looking to get between £3 and £5 million in through the door for Sambi Lokonga. If they've managed to get 10, I think that's really, really good business. Look, it was clear that he didn't have a future at Arsenal. It was clear that his time as a gunner had come to an end. I felt a bit for Lokonga, because I felt like he went to Sevilla with the hope of that becoming a permanent thing. And although I would argue that he wasn't amazing there, and there would have been a debate to be had among the Sevilla hierarchy with regards to whether or not it was worth sort of going ahead and trying to make the deal permanent, it was actually their financial situation, from what I've heard, that just made it impossible. And so there was no debate to be had. And so there's Sambi Lokonga, who's gone to Sevilla quite, content with that move, in the kind of feeling that he would be staying there and playing a part in La Liga moving forward, etc., only for their financial situation to make it essentially impossible for that deal to go through. As I say, it's been reported by Jordan Davis from The Sun that we've got £10 million for Sambi Lokonga. If we've got £10 million, I'm pleased with that. I really, really am. Fabio Vieira has also gone to Hamburg. This one is a loan with an option to buy at the end of the season. Now, according to reports, that option to buy is worth more than 20 million euros. If I'm going to guess, I'm going to say that I don't think Hamburg will be taking up that option. Fabio Vieira is clearly talented, right? He's clearly got a good left foot. He's clearly an intelligent footballer. I really hoped that when he went to Porto last season, he was going to show people that in familiar settings, in the right environment, he can really do it. And I was hoping that somebody would come in and take a bit of a gamble on him this summer. Now, we know that Stuttgart were interested in Fabio Vieira, but Arsenal were not willing at that point to lower their demands. And so we've ended up in a situation where the only offer that we have on the table for Fabio Vieira is a loan. And my one criticism of some of these deals that we've done is that, a lot of them are loans, and we're going to end up back in the same spot next year where we're trying to move players on and trying to kind of, get contracts, off of our table essentially. But you look at these players and you look at these moves. For example, right, Lokonga, fine, you get 10 million quid in for him, according to reports. I'm happy with that. I'm chuffed with that. Fabio Vieira goes to Hamburg. I'm almost certain, as I say, that Hamburg will not take up that 20 million euro option to buy. And so next summer, we have a similar issue. The hope is that the player goes and performs, and that the player goes and shows people what he's capable of, to the point where you can actually demand a decent amount of money for him next summer, because I don't believe that Fabio Vieira has a future at Arsenal. The problem is that Fabio Vieira went back to his club, went back to Porto last season, and didn't do enough to convince many that he was a worthwhile option. If he couldn't do it in that very familiar environment at the club he came through at, the club that he was adored at by so many. And I know this because I went to Porto just after we signed Fabio Vieira to do some work. And I was speaking with one of the club's hierarchy for an interview that I was doing. And he was like, guys, take care of Fabio Vieira. He's such a talent. We love him so much here. So I feel like if he went back there with all the love and support in the world and still couldn't do it, I wonder how he's going to fare in the Bundesliga. It is a very transitional league. It is a league where there's notoriously quite a bit of space for attacking players to operate in. Maybe he'll do fine. I hope he does fine. But I just feel like the option to buy thing, we've put it in there, but whether that's going to be actually utilized or not, I don't know. And in fact, I very much doubt. Elsewhere, Reiss Nelson looks set to join Brentford. Now, at the time of us recording this, there is no official confirmation of this deal, but listening to Sky Sports and all the other people that are working around the clock to try and bring us all the latest news, they say that a deal sheet has been put in, and this is something that is going to go through. It's just a case of us waiting for that official confirmation. Reiss Nelson posted something on social media as well of a Brentford shirt, so that's his way of saying this is coming. So not worried about that. But again, it's a loan. Again, there's an option there, but is there any guarantee that that option is going to get taken up? I think the issue with Reiss Nelson in recent times has been injuries. And I could understand why Fulham, who were interested previously, and maybe Crystal Palace, who have been involved in talks with Arsenal apparently over the course of this summer as well. I could understand why those two clubs were reluctant to put down significant offers, because you worry that Reiss Nelson won't be able to stay fit for the entire campaign or even for the majority of it. That's a problem. But it does get a little bit frustrating, doesn't it, when you watch the likes of Chelsea and various other clubs. Chelsea, by the way, have got £17 million today for Nicholas Jackson. Like, how the hell has that happened? My point is that it's a little bit frustrating when you see players like Reiss Nelson, pretty much every summer we get to a point where it's like, well, we can't sell you because nobody wants to buy you, so we need to push you out the door by opening ourselves up essentially to a loan. And then a year down the line, we have this same issue again of trying to fix and sort of resolve the future of a player like that. And listen, he's a talented boy. There's no doubt about that. And he'll always be held in high regard, I think, within Arsenal circles, because I think we all acknowledged in his younger days, especially, that there was a talent there, and there were various factors that just prevented him from making the breakthrough. But yeah, he's going to Brentford. Kiwior has done, or at the time I wrote these notes, Kiwior had done his photos and his medical at Porto, and there was just a delay while we were waiting for the Hincapie announcement. Now that has since been announced, and therefore Jakub Kiwior's move to Porto has been announced too. Look, I'd imagine, and I've said this on recent episodes, that Jakub Kiwior was really pushing this from his side. I'd imagine that he felt that he needed to go somewhere where he's going to play far more regularly, where he was going to be a nailed-on guaranteed starter. Porto are a big club. Not sure that's the league I would have gone to if I was him, but lovely lifestyle, big football club, and he's got the opportunity to go there and sort of show Europe what he can do. I thought he did that, last season when he came in to our team at the kind of crucial point in the Champions League. I thought he did brilliantly, but it wasn't enough for him. And I understand that, and I get that. Arsenal have looked at an opportunity to recoup more than essentially, all of the money that they paid for him, and a little bit more on top, in the form of and in the shape of an obligation to buy at the end of this original loan spell. So Arsenal will get their money. They'll just get it 12 or so months down the line. Hincapie has been announced as well, and he's going to wear the number 5 shirt. Lots of compliments to him from Arteta, from Berta. He's talked about why he was convinced by the Arsenal project, because we want to win big trophies. You can check out all the content over on arsenal.com if you want to take some of that in. But we will focus on Piero Hincapie a little bit more over the course of this week. In fact, he'll probably be the main subject of our Tuesday podcast. Remember, you might be listening to this on Tuesday, but this is a podcast that we're recording late on Monday. So depending on where you are in the world, you might get a little bit confused with the timing and the slight adjustment we've made to our content publishing schedule. But anyway, there's lots of great Hincapie content over on the Arsenal website. Go over there now and check it out. Oleksandr Zinchenko, I thought he was staying. I really, really did. I thought that his wage demands were going to be a major, major problem. And obviously they have been for a lot of clubs. We know that Fulham were looking at him earlier on in the window. We know that Marseille were looking at him a lot more recently. And it was funny because I read a few posts today where people were sort of suggesting that, if Oleksandr Zinchenko does care about playing the game as much as he said he did in some recent extracts that were published from his book. Remember all of that, where he was talking a little bit about being left out of the team and how difficult that was for him. There were people saying, well, if he cares that much about playing and he only wants to do what that little boy growing up wanted to do, which is play football regularly, why doesn't he accept the pay cut? Why doesn't he acknowledge that by going elsewhere and having that opportunity, he's going to have to take a bit of a pay cut? I think because of how long he had to run on his Arsenal contract, there was probably less urgency. He's probably looking at it and thinking, I can be a bit part player for a year and still collect a really good, positive salary. I mean, all footballers' salaries are good, but his is particularly good because, as I've said before, he came in at a really crucial time in Arsenal's rebuild and in the kind of reshaping of Arsenal Football Club. I think he deserves our respect, and I've always said that because of how big a part he played when he first came in and in that initial elevation. But there come a point where he was no longer the answer for us or the solution in that particular area of the park, and you have to be ruthless. We talked a lot about Gabriel Martinelli over the summer, for instance, and the call has been, we've got to be more ruthless with this guy. We've got to move on from him. I think we probably have, in the sense of, I'd imagine Ebere Eze will play a hell of a lot more from that left-hand side in the coming weeks and months. But, ruthlessness is important. And unfortunately, we moved past Zinchenko. And so look, he's gone, but it's a straight loan deal. And, I don't really know how much we benefit from that, if I'm being completely honest with you, because unless Nottingham Forest are taking on a significant portion of his wages, I'd imagine Arsenal would have only agreed to this if it were to be the case that they were going to take on quite a big amount of his wages, because his contract runs out at the end of the season, right? So this isn't one we're going to have to deal with in 12 months' time, but then there's got to be some benefit now, right, to letting him go now. And that benefit, I'd imagine, is that they will pay towards his wages, which just takes that cost off of our backs for a little while. But I have to say, that one came out of nowhere for me. I thought we were done in terms of the outgoings. I was going to make a case on tomorrow morning's pod that I was a little bit underwhelmed, actually, by the outgoings. And I knew that most of them would roll into the very latter stages of the window, because that's often the case. And I didn't think that we'd get significant money for any of those players either. But the idea that we were going to be left with a couple of them that just have no role to play at the moment and probably won't be in match day squads, that just didn't really sit right with me. Now, David Ornstein put out the Zinchenko stuff at what? Hold on, let's have a look at what time he posted it. 9:10. So a good 2 hours after the transfer window officially closed. That's when we heard of Nottingham Forest's interest. But the deal sheet had already been submitted. It's a straight loan deal. And both Nottingham Forest and Arsenal are confident that that switch will go through, despite there being, at the time of recording, and I'm sure there will be by the time most of you listening to this, there's been no confirmation from the two clubs. Okay, moving on to a few other stories, to a few other players, not necessarily Arsenal related. Let's start with Alexander Isak. It shows, doesn't it? Player power is everything. He's been criticised. He's been ostracized. He's been sort of, really kind of attacked for his behaviour, in that he's refused to play for Newcastle. He's refused to train. He's refused to be a part of the group and to be a part of the squad. And Newcastle's stance for such a long time was, we're not selling, we're not selling, we're not selling, we're not selling. Well, Newcastle have essentially been bullied by Alexander Isak into selling. Now, from a business perspective, Newcastle are absolutely right to do this, right? Because you can't have an asset like that depreciating day after day after day. And particularly if you're a club that has issues with the PSR stuff and you feel that that's a problem, you cannot pass up the opportunity, can you, to sell a player for north of 125, 130 million pound. So I thought Newcastle would always buckle if another Liverpool offer came in. It would have to be an improved offer, and that, of course, it was. I think also the fact that they got Voltemada in, and the fact that they managed to do the Johan Visser deal today as well, that's probably made Newcastle feel a lot more comfortable in sanctioning this sale because they feel like on the pitch they can cope with it. But from a financial standpoint, they had to make it too. So it just goes to show that you can talk the talk as a football club and say, nope, we're not selling. We don't have to sell. We're not in a position where we need to sell, etc., etc., etc. But if the player really digs their heels in because of the way the system works, and this isn't even a criticism of Newcastle United, because of the way the system works, like players can do what Oleksandr Isak has done because we allow that to happen, because there is room for that in our game. They can back you into a corner and put you in a position where you've got no choice at the end of the day. And that's what's happened. Newcastle would not have wanted to lose Oleksandr Isak, not in a Champions League season for them. But unfortunately, the player had his head turned. His mind was made up. He only wanted Liverpool. He always wanted Liverpool. And that deal has gone through. A deal that hasn't gone through is a deal that was due to take Mark Gay from Crystal Palace to Liverpool. There was a £35 million fee agreed. Mark Gay had gone and conducted his medical only for Crystal Palace, having missed out on a couple of centre-back targets on deadline day, to essentially pull the plug on it. Now, Mark Gay is a really good guy and a really humble guy, and I'm sure that Mark Gay will be able to handle this mentally a lot better than other people, than other players. But the problem is that you've built this guy up to believe today that he was going to get the essentially move of his dreams. And right at the last minute, that has been pulled out from underneath him. So I feel sorry for Mark Gay. I really, really do. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that there's kind of two ends of the spectrum here. You've got your Oleksandr Isaks, who have done everything within their power. Johan Visser as well. Let's not pretend that he hasn't been doing the same thing, Newcastle fans. Johan Visser, Oleksandr Isak, throwing their toys out the pram, refusing to train, refusing to play, eventually got what they wanted. Mark Gay, who's done everything right, who has played for Crystal Palace, who's captained Crystal Palace throughout all of this and did the same impeccably well last year when he was a subject of some real serious interest from Newcastle. He's behaved brilliantly, and he's the one of all the players that were potentially on the move today that's missed out on his dream move. I feel for him. I really, really do. It sounds like, if you read some of the reports, that Oliver Glasner was just like, this cannot happen. I mean, Oliver Glasner said as much, didn't he, after the Villa game on Sunday night? I think, and again, these are just reports I'm reading. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if these reports are accurate. These reports say that Oliver Glasner turned around and went, I'm gone, and threatened to leave if the sale of Mark Gay was sanctioned. And I kind of get it. Like, we all knew that Gay was probably going to leave. We all knew that Ebere Eze was probably going to leave because he had 2 years left on his contract. If he was to stay at Palace for one more, he'd then be going into the final year. And we talk about value and the depreciation of assets. That asset, its value would have gone down like that, right? So I get it. Those two departures were, to a degree, to be expected. The problem is that Oliver Glasner was not backed early enough. And this is a frustration that he's had throughout his time at Crystal Palace. And he's voiced these issues on many occasions. He's a very outspoken coach. Okay. He's done this at previous clubs where he's talked out against the transfer policy. He's talked out against the way the football club is being run. When he delivers success the way that Oliver Glasner does, you kind of allow him to get away with a little bit more than maybe any other manager would. But I do feel like the relationship between Glasner and Crystal Palace, it just can't be great. It can't be great. And I'll tell you what, the first time we see a major Premier League manager at one of the major clubs, fired this season, Oliver Glasner will be right in the frame and right in the mix. So if I'm him, I'm biding my time. I'm keeping my eyes open. And I'm keeping my head down to a degree and just focusing on my coaching and showing people what I can do, because that next move, it is coming for Oliver Glasner. Crystal Palace, I beg your pardon, they can't afford to lose him. I'd imagine that Glasner's had a conversation with Mark Gay, explained why he cannot be allowed to leave. Steve Parish, from fear of losing a very successful coach, his most successful coach ever, someone that's led them to the FA Cup, has probably had to kind of play the Glasner side of things rather than Mark Gaze, which means that the club lose out on some money and maybe lose the player for free next summer unless they can get something in for him in January. But I think Steve Parish really values what Oliver Glasner's done, can do, and will probably continue to do, at least for the time being, and has decided that if I lose him and I lose Gay, we're in trouble. And as much as a club like Crystal Palace wants to make money and wants to put themselves on sound financial footing and would think about things through a business point of view quite a bit, you also have to think about the footballing side of things. Because if you fall too far and you drop out the Premier League, we've seen clubs do that and not come back for an awful, awful long time. So yeah, that one didn't go through. I thought that was really, really interesting. I mentioned Jackson to Bayern for 70 odd million pounds. I mean, it's initially a loan with an obligation to buy, and it comes to about 80 million euros. So you're talking about 70 million pounds. That to me is just wild. Wild. Look, we're gonna wrap up in a few minutes because it is late. I'm absolutely knackered, as I've told you. I don't know if I'm still coming through like a Dalek or if my picture's better and all the rest of it. But anyway, to kind of summarize, I think our window has been really, really good. Really, really good. 8 players in, all of a good standard. Some, as I would say, needle movers, others that are squad players and players that will back us up and will certainly give us that little bit more depth. Getting Eze was massive. And then hearing that we were going for Hincapie, that was, a real kind of signal of intent to me, because I didn't think that we were going to go and get anybody else post the Eze signing. Yet we've gone and done it. Obviously, it was conditional on the departure of Jakub Kiwior. That's gone through. As I've said to you guys, I think Jakub Kiwior was probably pushing for that on his side of things as well. I think overall our window's been good. And listen, people are going to start comparing it to Liverpool's window. Liverpool's window's been outstanding, okay? But I think we've spent like, 230, 240 million quid, maybe. I haven't done the maths off the top of my head. Liverpool, right, have spent 420 million-ish pounds in this one transfer window. Now, we're going to talk about our team. We're going to talk about how our window ranks versus some of the others in the Premier League on tomorrow's episode. We've got loads to unpack, and we've got a great opportunity to do that now with the international break. But ask yourself this question, because there was a huge overreaction to our defeat at Anfield. There was a lot of nonsense going around. I do enjoy listening to different opinions, and I thought there were a lot of opinions that were in direct conflict with mine, but that made sense and that I was willing to listen to because the arguments put forward were really good. So I'm not narrow-minded. I'm open-minded. I want to hear both sides, right? I'm all up for the debate. But ask yourself this question, because people are sort of talking about us as though, we have to win the league, in the sense of we have to win it because we should win it. Like, by rights, we should win it. And I just don't agree with that whatsoever. I think Mikel Arteta needs to have success this season. Absolutely. That is undeniable, because people want to see this project come to a head. And I'm one of those people. I agree with that. We have to be successful in some way, shape, or form. But this idea that Arsenal have to win the league, they have to cruise to the league, they have to march to the league, and it should be easy, is mad, because what you are ignoring is the fact that Liverpool, for example, and I'm only using Liverpool as the example because obviously they're up there. They're the favourites in the eyes of a lot of people. They've spent north of 400 million quid in one summer window. So spending 200 million is fantastic. Spending 250 million is fantastic. But if you look at what Man City, if you look at what Liverpool have and Chelsea have spent in recent years, actually you'll start to think, I think anyway, that maybe we didn't have a divine right to win the Premier League at any point. And maybe, finishing second, it's not success, but maybe it's a little bit more understandable than some people would care to admit. So I think we got to go one better. At some point, we have to overachieve. Some would argue we've already done that. I would say probably not, given the level of investment and over the years and the way we've been allowed to build our team and put a squad together in the image of our manager. But I think when you look into the finances, you look at wage bills, you look at how much is being spent, I think you can understand why, there'll be people like me that say there is no divine right to win this league. We can win it, and let's hope that we do, but we're not going to sit here and say, oh my God, we're going to win it. And when we don't win it, we're going to be outraged and completely dismiss and ignore the fact that there are other bloody good teams out there that can spend bloody big amounts of money. And that are obviously going to be in the mix and in with a shout as well. So just think about what I've just said there about Liverpool, the spend. They're coming from a position of strength already. They've looked to capitalize on that by going really big in the window to, in their eyes, kind of cement their place at the top of the pile. They've never retained the Premier League title, by the way, Liverpool. So there's an opportunity for them to do that. That's what they're after. But my point is that we're not the only horse on the race course. There's lots and lots of competitive teams in this Premier League. Us, Liverpool, Man City are the three that everyone was talking about going into the season. Chelsea might not be up there right now in terms of their performances and their league finishes in recent years, but look at the money they've spent. They've spent well over £1 billion under this ownership. So yeah, there's no God-given right, is there, to win this Premier League? And I think it's really, really important that we kind of acknowledge that. The other thing is, like, our window's been good, and I'm not going to let people tell me that because Liverpool's window's been what it is, that ours is not good anymore. Liverpool's window is great, but our window's good in the sense of we addressed the needs that we have. We've gone and bought another defender in now as well, which improves and enhances and adds to our options. Obviously, we've lost Jakub Kiwior, so there is a like for like, but Arsenal will feel that they're getting an upgrade in Piero Hincapie. Otherwise, what was the point in doing the deal? So we're doing the right things. We had a setback on Sunday. We'll talk a little bit more about that game and some of the lessons learned from it over the course of the week, I'm sure. But in terms of the transfers, just to wrap up, I'm a little bit underwhelmed by some of the deals that we've done with regards to outgoings. But as I always say, if there's no demand, it's a very, very difficult sell, isn't it? Lokonga, if we did get 10 million or thereabouts for him, I think that's really, really good business. Vieira to Hamburg on loan with an option. Nobody was willing to get near our valuation. That's why we've had to do the deal that we have. Nelson to Brentford loan, again with an option. That's all we could negotiate at this late stage in the window. Kiwior's done his move to Porto. Hincapie's coming here. Zinchenko has gone to Nottingham Forest. Isak's been unveiled as a Liverpool player. Gay's staying put at Crystal Palace. Jackson's on his way to Bayern Munich for £70 million. It's been a really busy and lively deadline day. We'll do some more in-depth analysis on some of those stories, and we'll continue to look back at the weekend's game on tomorrow's full episode of the pod. Until then, take care of yourselves. Don't forget, before I go, leave a like on the video, not in the chat. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I am absolutely cream crackered. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Until then, goodbye.